the shortest of them all because my other two classes didn't finish all of Tuesdays. So we had to take up 20 yesterday to finish the work from Tuesday. So they had to really scramble to finish. Okay. Come on, hit share. Morning, Megan.
Morning.
Okay, so let me get to P7 because that's what section this is. Let me also take a moment to let my friends know that if you did not make a perfect 4 out of 4 on your quiz, then you either made a 2 or a 0. Both of those are Fs. So you had to make a perfect 4 out of 4, meaning you got both of them right or you got an F. That's the problem with only having 2 questions on a test. Because I had someone come up to me first before y'all came in here, so for my third block, and he was about to cry. He said, I got an F call on it. I said, yes, sir, because you missed one question. So let me go to my computer. Call out your grades. Call out your grades on the quiz yesterday, okay? Is everybody okay if I just call out the scores, no matter if they're a 0, 2, or 4? It's not a big grade, y'all. It's worth 4 points total. Is everybody okay if I call out these grades?
Yes, ma'am.
Who said no?
No one.
If you're okay with me calling out your score, give me a thumbs up. Okay, so everybody's okay? All right. Like I said, it's only out of 4. Logan, you made a 2. Skyuna made a 4. Diaz, you made a 2. Michaela, you made a 4. Hunter, you made a 0. You did turn it in, but you got them both wrong. And I had several people that did that through the day. Maya got a 4. So proud of her. Kayla got a 4. Aaliyah got a 0. Allie got a 4. Melanie got a 4. Bryson got a 0. Ricardo got a 4. Kaylee got a 4. And Kimber got a 4. And here's the thing. I think a lot of people got confused on number 2. The 15th Amendment itself gave African Americans the right to vote. But some people marked that it gave the states an opportunity to start poll taxes and literacy tests, because we also talked about that too, right? But that's why I was trying to tell you guys, we're not talking about the discrimination that was going on around the voting areas. This is just asking about the 15th Amendment itself. See the difference? The other thing I saw a lot of was people confusing the 14th and 15th Amendment, even though they're written right here. And it was over there. Guys, you've got to go back to your sources, because a lot of people told me it gave the 14th Amendment allowed people to vote. Which one allowed African American people to vote? 15th.
And it didn't only do people, only men.
Only men. But guys, this is a testing strategy that I want you to keep remembering. I've pointed out to you sometimes. I don't do it all the time, but I need you to do this. When you have a question on a test, stop playing with that, Hunter. When you have a question on a test, highlight or underline the key words. In this case, in the 14th Amendment, those key words is are citizens of the United States. Or if you want to make it a little easier for you, all citizens born or naturalized are citizens. You highlight that in your source. Got it? And then go over to the question. And that would make it where you wouldn't miss the question. Make sense? Okay. Then the 15th Amendment. Believe it or not, I had quite a few people, including a brilliant child in this class, tell me it gave women the right to vote. I wish. On there, you can see the 19th gave women the right to vote. But several people told me it gave women the right to vote. No, that's the 19th. Okay. Like I said, several people said poll taxes and literacy tests. It's not that. That was the way that some states made their own huge loophole around the 15th Amendment. Because the 15th Amendment itself said that all men who were not convicted criminals could vote. Okay? Everybody understand? I have everybody's test now, right? So your correct answers will be who hasn't tested? It was just Joanna and I here yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Correct answers were 14th gave African American men citizenship, B. And 15th Amendment was it granted African American men the right to vote, B. Okay. So Joanna, you have a 0 out of 4.
Oh, here it is.
Like I said, I had zeros in every class. And for the reasons that I just explained, a lot of people got confused with the whole poll tax and literacy test thing, or they just flat out got 14th and 15th Amendment,
Oh, yeah.
their actions confused. Okay. I'm not gonna pass them out yet because I haven't graded the DBQ.
Oh, do I do it?
I think it's an RTI. You come back to me to RTI, right? You have a question? Do you have a question? No? Okay. So currently in social studies, Logan, you have a 97, Skyuna 97, Diaz 83C, Michaela 90B, Megan 106A, Kayla is passing. You want me to call off grade or no? 71D. That means you only have 4 percentage points to get to a C. You can do it. Okay. Joanna 94A, Aaliyah is passing but barely. You gotta start giving me the effort you were giving me for a while because lately you've not been putting out as much effort. I need you to start scrambling and giving me that high effort again so that your grades start going up and you don't have much time to do it. Allie's a 93A, Melanie 106A, Bryson 84C, that's a point away from a B. Ricardo 82C, Kaylee 80C, and Kimber 91B.
Oh, that's
If I didn't call out the grade, it's because it's a red grade. Okay. I was very impressed with mine getting 4 out of 4 yesterday because I knew that question about implementing poll taxes and literacy tests would confuse a lot of people because our DBQ talked about poll tax on one page and the literacy test on another page. And those immediately followed the 15th Amendment.
the last question of the 15th Amendment would be this.
Oh, yes.
I hope they're married.
Please
I
give me a
don't know
minute.
how people can use 14th and 15th.
I just
What's on
can't.
the board?
Shoot, I've got moments where I can't remember my own name. Right now, I can't breathe very well. Allergies are fun, right? Lots of fun. Okay, source 1, 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States. What is it, Joanna?
I submitted something.
What is it?
I submitted those pages, but I didn't just do the food test.
Okay, I didn't grade anything last night. It's my son's 21st birthday when we went out. So I've graded nothing since I left school yesterday. I'll grade it tonight. Back to source 1. 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. So 14th is dealing with what? What right is 14th giving? Citizenship, yes. So let's go to Thursday text source 2. Okay, this is the actual cover page of this decision. Plessy v. Ferguson, Supreme Court decision. That date, 1895. So I'm going to read that top part, the top paragraph. This writ of error brings up a judgment rendered in the Supreme Court of Louisiana, denying to the plaintiff in error writs of prohibition. A writ is a document from a court, etc., asked for against the defendant in error as judge of a certain criminal court of that state, as to which writs the following extract from the opinion of the court below will be sufficient. Introduction. When a party is prosecuted for crime under a law alleged to be unconstitutional, in a case which is unappealable, and where a proper plea setting up the unconstitutionality has been overruled by the judge, a proper case arises for an exercise of our supervisory jurisdiction in determining whether the judge is exceeding the bounds of judicial power by entertaining a prosecution for a crime not created by law. All that means this, if I can get my mouse pad to work. And let me remind you, what state that come out of? Louisiana. On May 18th, 1896, the United States Supreme Court case, Plessy versus Ferguson, ruled that separate but equal facilities were constitutional. Do you understand what separate but equal? That means there would be a school for African Americans and a school for whites. Water fountains according to a person's skin color. Restaurants according to a person's skin color. They even had different parts of the bus. Hello.
Do you have any fundraiser money?
I don't. Let me keep reading this. The Plessy versus Ferguson decision upheld the principle of racial segregation. To segregate means to separate. Racial segregation for the next 50 years. The ruling allowed separate but equal facilities for African Americans in such places as hotels, theaters, and schools. African Americans were provided their own bathrooms, their own water fountains, schools, and even stores that they were allowed to use. The law also allowed bus and train companies to have specific seating areas for African Americans. Okay, so in Louisiana Supreme Court, this is what was decided. Separate but equal was constitutional. In other words, it was fine. It was good. And that went for 50 years, which means until the 1950s. Okay. And that I don't know if you can still find it in 2021, but I know as of the 1990s, you could still go to some southern towns and you could see above some of those, like in parks, city parks, you could find above the restroom doors where it's stamped in concrete, blacks and whites. Like a piece of history, horrible piece of history, but a piece nonetheless. It's awful, is it not? Absolutely awful.
So that means that both of them were.
What is it?
Does that mean both of them were allowed, or only?
Does
Does that sign mean both of them were allowed? Both were?
No, you. Who in here's been to Betty, Virginia Park? That really big park off Line Avenue, close to Byrd High School. Only one person? Two? Really? Y'all need to get out park some. Three? Betty, Virginia is a park that's been established for a long, long time. And it's got this big building when you leave the parking lot. It's close to the parking lot. That's the restroom facility, and they have a place in there where you can cook and stuff. It used to have, when I was a kid, so this is 80s, it used to have signs over one set of bathrooms that said whites, and over other sets of bathrooms, blacks. That's why there's so many bathrooms at that building, because they had to build in separate facilities for African Americans and whites. Same thing as, what is that thing called? Hirsch Coliseum. They've renovated it, but when I was a kid in the 80s, they still had above the doors, it was etched in the concrete. So it wasn't like these black signs that stick out from our doors. You can just take those off. But at the Hirsch Coliseum, they had etched in the door in the concrete, like right above the door, blacks over some of them, whites over the others. And I was like, I asked my grandfather, I called him Granddaddy. I said, Granddaddy, why does it say that? And he said, I don't even want to talk about it. Piece of history, yes, but a horrible piece of history. And don't think that's just an American thing, because there's still racism, not African Americans versus white, but you've heard me discuss the people who travel with the reindeer in Finland. They travel with the reindeer in Russia, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Those people are known in Alaska too. In Alaska, they're known as Inuits. In northern part of Europe, they're known as Sami. Well, the governments of those countries and the people who live that are not Samis that live in those countries, they very much discriminate against them because they were nomads for a long time, for over 1,000 years. And they do not like it if a Sami comes in a building. They don't want Samis coming in because a lot of times Samis will live outside with their reindeer. And so they won't want them to come in to go to the restaurant or to go to their hotels and such. It's not just an American thing. Racism is in lots of countries. In Canada, you know how we have Native Americans here? Well, so does Canada. And I've read about it with their healthcare system specifically, because there is racial bias in American healthcare. And like I said, I study things like biases specifically against women internationally. But when I saw something about Canada's healthcare bias against their own Native Americans, it's pretty darn severe. And we're talking 2021. People with COVID in beds, literally moaning and in pain because they weren't getting treatment. And it was because they were Canadian Native Americans. And there's a bias against them. This horrible history of bias that's still, not to this point, but we still have plenty more that we need to work through. That's not just an American phenomenon. There's different groups that get picked on, for lack of a better word, that get discriminated against around the world. It's awful. I mean, the guy that we have for our tour guide, the Sami, that guy was flipping smart as could be. So Louisiana is the one that had the separate but equal bathroom ruling. Figures it'd be us, right? But in Louisiana, it'd be Mississippi or Alabama. Okay. Equal under the law, text source 3. Has anybody in here been to the Memphis Museum? I don't know if it's a Museum of Civil Rights, but it's a museum that has to do with, I think it's close to the Lorraine Motel. Has anybody in here been to it?
I've never been to it.
It's really, really interesting. They have some artifacts from the 1960s, including a garbage truck. No, you would have to know the history. It played a significant role in the 1960s civil movement. And they have a lot of things to read there that brings history alive. Craig and I went to it. Colby was little. Colby's probably 7 or 8.
Well, that's kind of weird.
No, I've always been one that takes my kids on, as Colby puts it, feels like a field trip because my mom, the teacher, is teaching me the whole time we're on it. All right, so this is a very well-known case here. This is the steps of the Supreme Court. That's the Supreme Court behind them. The mom is holding a newspaper that says, High Court bans segregation in public schools. Good day, Mariah. Let me go to this real quick. You twins, y'all got it bad every day because y'all's bus driver comes in so late every day. It's not that easy. It's hard to get bus drivers this year. So that little girl who looks very young, doesn't she? She's younger than you are now. Her mom, named Nettie Hunt, and her daughter, named Nikki, sit on the steps of the Supreme Court building on May 18th, 1954, the day following the court's historic decision in Brown versus Board of Education. I'm going to read this to you and then I'm going to explain something to you because that ruling is actually what started special education in schools. It's a big ruling. In 1954, large portions of the United States had racially segregated schools because of what, guys? Yes, but what did we just read in text source 2? What was that called? What was that court case called? Plessy versus Ferguson, and it was separate but equal. Policy was called separate but equal. So in 1954, large portions of the United States had racially segregated schools made legal by Plessy versus Ferguson from 1896, which held that segregated public facilities were constitutional so long as the black and white facilities were equal. A case was sent to the Supreme Court to overturn these laws. Anybody know what it means to overturn a law? To flip it to the other direction. To make it go away, bless you. To make it go away and make it the other way. Okay, so see my jar? Overturning it. It means it went the other direction. Okay. Case was sent to the Supreme Court to overturn these laws, especially when it came to public school. The Brown versus Board of Education of 1954, now acknowledged as one of the greatest Supreme Court decisions of the 20th century, unanimously held. In other words, all 9 Supreme Court justices said racial segregation of children in public schools violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. What was that 14th Amendment for again? Citizenship. It said that that separate but equal violated citizenship. That people who were separated and put in another school, they weren't being treated as equal citizens, which is true. Although the decision did not succeed in fully desegregating public education in the United States, it put the Constitution on the side of racial equality and galvanized, in other words, it made stronger, the emerging civil rights movement into a full revolution. Brown versus Board of Education did not just start desegregating schools. It said that all children, all, are entitled to a free and appropriate public education. It's called FAPE, F-A-P-E, free and appropriate public education. Before that ruling in 1954, children with any kind of special needs could not attend school. They were institutionalized and they wouldn't go to school. That decision said that all children deserved free and appropriate public education. That is our start of special education. Brown versus Board of Education. That little girl, can you imagine the courage it took? I think she was a second grader to walk into an all-white school with what you know is jerks standing around that school yelling at her as she's walking in. Can you imagine how much courage she had to have? And how much faith and courage her parents had to have to send their little girl through that after fighting in court to get her that right too. That's a pretty brave little girl, is it not? Hunter, sit up. This is not bedtime. Wouldn't you say that's very courageous for a second grader to do that? That's a little bitty girl. Okay, so let's go to assignments. Yes. What you're looking for is this: equal under the law, WS. Everybody got that?
No.
Equal under the law, WS. So that top one asks what rights the 14th Amendment gave to all citizens. I'm going to read it because they give you a little piece of it on the scroll. 14th Amendment, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, and remember liberty means freedom, or property without due process of law. In other words, you can't take a person's life, their freedom, or their stuff without going to court.
Wait, how did they go to court?
They would get a jury summons and go to court, get a warrant, bench warrant. Nor deny to any person the equal protection of the laws. So write what you need to in that first box. have so many of my books turned around backwards where you can't see the slide. Please don't make me take one of these, right? All right, has everybody finished question one? If anybody's working on question one, raise your call. Okay. Keep working your compass. We're doing fine. Are you still working on yours, Kayla? All right, who's still working? several books on Martin Luther King, and I've not been able to find a single one. I know where they are. There's one. Okay.
Oh, really? The book off the show. Why are you checking?
All right. Keep going to the next one. Second one says, explain how Plessy versus Ferguson interpreted the 14th Amendment. So interpreted the rights of citizens given under the 14th Amendment. Now remember, Plessy versus Ferguson is the one that said separate but equal was constitutional. Okay, so write how that decision interpreted the rights of citizens given under the 14th Amendment. Okay. That's how you spell separate. Make it past tense, you just stick a D on it. working on this second question. Okay, the third question says explain how Brown versus Board of Education. Come on, shrink a little bit, please. Interpreted the rights of citizens given under the 14th Amendment. You don't need to mention the special ed thing, okay? The bigger thing that Brown versus Board of Education. Recall back for a moment. It got rid of separate but equal, yes? And it said, what about the classroom? Who should be in the classroom, guys? All children. Correct. Much more beautiful world when it's diverse. All right, once you finish this, hit submit. Again, when you finish it, submit. We can't close our computers. Did Mr. Meadows or Ms. Daniels already discussed this with y'all? Okay. So we have to have them in Canvas when you go to Richmond. That's what Ms. Anderson was. What? Oh, it doesn't matter. Just hit submit on this. And you can be just anywhere in Canvas, but I'd rather y'all not be flowing around. All right, so that's the only thing that you have to do written today. But I happen to have quite a few books on civil rights. This one is about Ruby Bridges, and I'll read the little bit in the back. It's 1960, and Ruby Bridges and her family have recently moved from Mississippi to New Orleans in search of a better life. When a judge orders Ruby to attend first grade at William Frantz Elementary, an all-white school, Ruby must face angry mobs of parents who refuse to send their children to school with her. This moving picture book captures the spirit of a little girl standing alone in the face of racism. If you're still working on these questions, raise your call. Okay, you keep working. I'm going to start reading, okay? What is it, Michaela?
It's just like the gal in the picture that says explain.
Correct. Correct.
It's just like that. And the picture looks like she's like, looks like she's happy for her day in the new school.
Scared to death of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, she made me have to like
So here's the story behind Ruby Bridges. She was the first African-American child to desegregate. Thank you. You see, I put it on the board already too.
Oh,
when he was starting to put talk about it, I put it right on the board at the time because that's the only one that affects fourth graders. Because they were looking at me like they wanted me to write the rest. I'm like, no, this is the one that applies to you. Thank you. That's nice and colorful. She was the first African-American child to desegregate the all-white William Frantz Elementary School in Louisiana during the New Orleans school desegregation crisis on November 14th, 1960. So she's only 11 years older than my husband.
Oh, so she's
Guys, Caddo Parish desegregated 14 years later. It went district by district. It wasn't the whole state of Louisiana desegregated in 1960. Caddo Parish is one of the last places in the country to desegregate. 1974, the year I was born, this parish finally desegregated. It's a lot more recent than what most people realize. Okay. So I'm going to turn off the share on this and turn it on share on ImageMate. All right. I'm not going to zoom in for it to show. Hopefully it does show and the glare doesn't kill the image. Come on, zoom in because it's a really pretty cover. Okay, it's overdoing it on the contrast again. Look. Joanna. Under the Elmo, the contrast is weird. Hopefully be better on these pages because they're yes. This is slow Elmo. There's the front cover. It's actually not that dark, but it got rid of the overly bright look too. Our Ruby taught us all a lot. She became someone who helped change our country. She was part of history, just like generals and presidents are part of history. They're leaders, and so was Ruby. Here she was, just a child.
I can't see it.
Oh, okay. Let me do share screen. Share screen. Image mate. There you go. All right, that should get it.
Okay.
All right. Ugh, it stopped sharing. I gotta do it again. Okay, where'd my share screen go? There we go. There we go. Now, here she was, just a little child, and she was a leader. She led us away from hate, and she led us nearer to knowing each other, the white folks and the black folks. Her mother wrote that. I'll look that up. Okay, so there's a picture of her just sitting by probably her dad's truck. Little girl holding her teddy bear. Ruby Bridges was born in a small cabin near Tylertown, Mississippi. We were very poor, very, very, very poor, Ruby said. My daddy worked picking crops. We just barely got by. There were times when we didn't have much to eat. The people who owned the land were bringing in machines to pick the crops. So my daddy lost his job, and that's when we had to move. I remember us leaving. I was 4, I think. I'll show you the picture first. Mom kept tucking them all in one bed. In 1957, the family moved to New Orleans. Ruby's father became a janitor. Her mother took care of the children during the day. After they were tucked in bed, Ruby's mother went to work scrubbing floors in a bank. Every Sunday, the family went to church. We wanted our children to be near God's Spirit, Ruby's mother said. We wanted them to start feeling close to Him from the very start. At that time, Black children and white children went to separate schools in New Orleans. The Black children were not able to receive the same education as the white children. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's laws, because Brown versus Board of Education was in 1954, 6 years before. So the schools were supposed to be desegregated. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 Black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. 3 of the girls were sent to McDonough, 19. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges was sent to 1st grade in William Frantz Elementary School. 6 years old, guys. She's a 1st grader. And she was the only little African-American child going to that school. That takes a whole lot of courage, doesn't it? Logan, really? Ruby's parents were proud that their daughter had been chosen to take part of an important event in American history. They went to church. We sat there and prayed to God, Ruby's mother said, that we'd all be strong and we'd have courage and we'd get through any trouble. And Ruby would be a good girl and she'd hold her head up high and be a credit to her own people and a credit to all the American people. We prayed long and we prayed hard. Y'all can't really see it from the distance, but watch when I zoom in on her. She's got her eyes barely open. You ever do that when you're in church? Everybody's praying, you but like barely open your eyes and look around. That's what she's doing. She's got her eyes open. Big sister there, she's got her eyes wide open. What is father? How does he look to you? Stressed. He looks stressed, worried, doesn't he? Okay. On Ruby's first day, a large crowd of angry white people gathered outside the Frantz Elementary School. The people carried signs that said they didn't want Black children in a white school. People called Ruby names, a little 1st grader,
adults calling a first grader names. Some wanted to hurt her. The city and state police did not help Ruby. The President of the United States ordered federal marshals to walk with Ruby into the school building. The marshals carried guns. So this little girl is getting escorted in the building by city federal marshals because of the other parents, yes. That even, wouldn't a 6-year-old be terrified even of the city marshals? There's a little girl walking between all these hateful people. Every day for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to the France school surrounded by marshals, wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair and carrying her lunch pail. Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, she saw a crowd of people marching up and down the streets. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. Very smart little girl. Oh, true story. Now look at that picture. How sad is that? It's just her. The white people in the neighborhood would not send their children to school. When Ruby got inside the building, she was all alone except for her teacher, Mrs. Henry. There were no, I'd like to keep reading. I'd like to keep reading. Is it an emergency?
No.
Okay. There were no other children to keep Ruby company, to play with and learn with, to eat lunch with. But every day, Ruby went into the classroom with a big smile on her face, ready to get down to the business of learning. She was polite and she worked well at her desk, Mrs. Henry said. She enjoyed her time there. She didn't seem nervous or anxious or irritable or scared. She seemed as normal and relaxed as any child I've ever taught. So Ruby began learning how to read and write in an empty classroom, an empty building, because people didn't even send their children to the school. Right? We wouldn't have to worry about people talking.
Yeah, those people kids gonna be dumb because they ain't going to school. The kids,
Yep.
yeah, but I'm gonna get educated.
All right, let's keep going, guys. Sometimes I look at her and wonder how she did it, said Mrs. Henry. How she went by those mobs and sat there all by herself and yet seemed so relaxed and comfortable. Mrs. Henry would question Ruby in order to find out if the girl was really nervous and afraid, even though she seemed so calm and confident. But Ruby kept saying she was doing fine. The teacher decided to wait and see if Ruby would keep on being so relaxed and hopeful, or if she gradually began to wear down, or even decide that she no longer wanted to go to school. There's her teacher working with her. I mean, she got probably a fabulous education because one-on-one teacher and student. It's like the best kind of tutoring ever. Then one morning, something happened. Mrs. Henry stood by a window in her classroom as she usually did, watching Ruby walk toward the school. Suddenly, Ruby stopped right in front of the mob of howling and screaming people. She stood there facing all those men and women. She seemed to be talking to them. There's all the angry people. And there's a little girl. She's got one of the marshals holding onto her shoulder and one beside her. Mrs. Henry saw Ruby's lips moving and wondered what Ruby could be saying. The crowd seemed ready to kill her. The marshals were frightened. They tried to persuade Ruby to move along. They tried to hurry her into the school, but Ruby wouldn't budge. Then Ruby stopped talking and walked into the school. That is one very courageous little first grader.
What did you say?
We're going to find out. So there's the teacher and the little girl talking. When she went into the classroom, Mrs. Henry asked her what had happened. Mrs. Henry told Ruby that she'd been watching and that she was surprised when Ruby stopped and talked to the people in the mob. Ruby became irritated. I didn't stop and talk with them, she said. Ruby, I saw you talking, Mrs. Henry said. I saw your lips moving. I wasn't talking, said Ruby. I was praying. I was praying for them. Every morning, Ruby had stopped a few blocks away from school to say a prayer for the people who hated her. This morning, she forgot until she was already in the middle of the angry mob. Huge heart and courage in that child. When school was over for the day, Ruby hurried through the mob as usual. After she walked a few blocks and the crowd was behind her, Ruby said the prayer she repeated twice a day before and after school. Please, God, try to forgive these people because even if they say these bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So you could forgive them. And just like you did those folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you.
I don't always do in there.
That's what marshals do. They're protecting her
No, I mean, the people in the mall. Do they have
because they were upset about a little girl coming to their school. Did they have what?
a routine to get there at school? Ooh.
Now that is an AR book. Yeah. All right. Has everybody finished their assignment and submitted it? Is there anybody who still needs to finish their assignment?
No.
Okay. Here is the quiz number for that book. 148 in AR. You need to get to Renaissance. Remember, you're going to have to get back into Canvas before we go to enrichment. But get to Renaissance. You can test on this. Stop with that hand. No, I love y'all be reading. It's really hard for me to talk today. 5 hours here today. 14855. I've never had bad allergies, Bob, since I had this surgery. This made things swell. All right, so your test, there's your quiz number. It's worth half a point, but half a point more than what you had. Yes, ma'am, Aaliyah. It shouldn't be asking for a password. We don't have any passwords this year. Melanie, can you help her? Quiet, please. Did you get it for? Raise your hand briefly to let me know when you finish your test. Okay, so I've only got 5 people who finished so far. I have another book to read to you guys, so you can make another set of points. Well, it helps because your teacher's also discussing it, so you were parts of it. Logan, Logan, Logan. Haley, are you done yet? Well, let's get it finished. Body passes. You only get 1 emergency bathroom break per week. Hopefully that's how they are doing it. Get a different color when we come back to spring break. Usually it's color after 6 weeks. We'll talk about receive what has each one is and I told you guys you don't hand those in ever, right?
Can we save for them?
Finishers, what?
Can we save them over the week?
You can't save them for another week. And if you don't use those, I'll give you some kind of treat. It might be an Eagle book, it might be a piece of candy. I'll give you some kind of treat, okay? If you don't use it during the week. Okay, everybody ready for this? Who's still testing? Everybody's finished? All right, so this one is Let the Children March. It's also worth a half point. Here's a timeline. Oh, man. All right. January 14th, 1963. Governor George Wallace makes his inauguration speech. I believe he's the governor of Alabama at the time, calling for segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Talk about a hateful governor, right? April 3rd, 1963, the first organized sit-ins take place at downtown lunch counters. April 12th, Dr. Martin Luther King and other protesters are arrested after leading a non-violent protest for demonstrating without a permit. So that was the way that the city justified arresting them. Well, you didn't get a permit for it. Because we know protesting is your First Amendment right. But they said you didn't get a permit. May 2nd. Oh, my voice. The glare. D-Day. The Birmingham Children's Crusade begins. By the end of the day, 973 young marchers are jailed. This book is about this. Okay. May 3rd, Double D-Day. More protesters are arrested, most of whom are under 18. Commissioner Bull Connor authorizes the use of high-pressure water hoses and police dogs to control the crowds. Close to 1,000 people are arrested, most of them children. Because children were the ones that were doing the protesting. This book is going to explain why. May 4th through 9th, protest, I need you quiet. Protest escalate as more adults join the marches. The jails are at maximum capacity with thousands of young people imprisoned. May 10th, Dr. King and other protest organizers reach an agreement with city leaders that begins a process of desegregation. The Ku Klux Klan holds a rally in the home of A.D. King. Dr. King's brother is bombed. May 19th, the school board expels many of the student demonstrators, but a federal judge overturns the expulsions just 3 days later. Now, let's read what led up to all this. Let the children march. See all the signs? We're going to read it if we can stop interrupting. 1963, Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't play on the same playground as the white kids. I couldn't go to their schools. I couldn't drink from their water fountains. There were so many things I couldn't do. It's a beautiful church back there, right? One warm spring night, my family went to church. We weren't there to have regular services. We were there to hear Dr. King speak. We were there to plan. Stop the talking. He wanted to raise an army of peaceful protesters to fight for freedom. His brown eyes flashing fire and love, Dr. King told us the time had come to march. I hate that. There we go. That fixes some glare. If I march, Mama said, I'll lose my job, sure enough. I can't march, Daddy said. I've got a family to feed. The weight of the world rested on our parents' shoulders, but this burden, this time, did not have to be theirs to share or bear. I don't have a boss to fear, my brother said, or a job to lose. We can march this time. We'll be Dr. King's army, I said. I'll be fine, Daddy, I promised. Don't worry, Mama. Dr. King didn't like children being put in harm's way. He was a daddy too, after all. But he said that though we were young, we were not too young to want our freedom. Let the children march. They will lead the way. So that's how it begun. Let children march. On May 2nd, a sunny Thursday, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, we all met at the church, dressed in our best, feet ready. In a silence so loud that all I could hear was my racing heart, we began to walk. Hand in hand we marched, so frightened, yet certain of what was right for freedom. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm going to walk on. And you see the heads of young people with sign in front of them. Would I be hurt? Would we be heard? Would it all be worth it in the end? I wanted to run from the angry faces in the crowd, run from danger, run from fear. Boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, on and on we marched, we marched, we marched. Singing the songs of freedom, 1,000 strong we came. Hate dogged my heels all that day, its yellowed canine teeth sharp, but courage walked by my side and kept me going. Can you see what's going on here?
Teacher, let me have your attention, please. At this time, we're doing our district device check today. We're going to turn the bells off. We're going to ask that everything holds in place from 9:30 to 10 a.m. this morning. After 10 a.m., we're going to ask that you still leave those devices on until 10:30, but we will start making our transitions at 10. Please make sure your students are logged in for the entire 30 minutes to an hour, and we're asking you to leave the devices on. All devices that will be used for testing must be logged into either Canvas or DRC. Middle school teachers and basically 5th through 8th grade teachers, this gives you an opportunity to check DRC. If there's any issues, you're having problems with DRC, if it's not the device that the child is using or that they're planning on testing with, that does not have DRC, please make a note of that, make us aware of it so we can get all these things in place before we actually start the testing. In lower elementary, we're asking grades 1 through our first through third grade students will need to be logged into Canvas and on their iPads. Students fourth grade will need to be logged in on Canvas through their Chromebooks. So please, let's go ahead and start this process and make sure that we are online for the entire.
Where are you, Maya? I need you on Canvas.
1 hour, but students will be logged in and on that for 30 minutes from 9:30 to 10. We'll leave the devices on from 10 to 10:30. Thank you.
Fresh. I need her on Canvas.
It just showed at the bottom of my screen. On the dashboard right here?
Just somewhere in Canvas. I need everyone somewhere in Canvas. No. The school is testing to see if everybody being on at the same time is going to bring down the system. That's why everybody has to be on Canvas. I don't need to know if you have next or previous at the bottom of your screen. They're trying to see if we can all be on Canvas at the same time. What is it?
At the bottom of my screen, it shows like a leaf and it says working offline.
Could you please stop clicking that? Thank you. It says it's offline.
Yeah, earlier, like a little leaf showed up and it said
When
working.
he was talking,
Yeah,
but it's not now. So you're fine. We didn't need to stop class and talk about it for 5 minutes. Is everybody in Canvas? Give me a thumbs up. Show me you're on Canvas. Ricardo. Okay, leave it in Canvas. It needs to stay there until we come back from enrichment. Okay, I'm going to continue with this. What is going on right here? What is that? Getting sprayed by a high pressure water hose. Guys, those can actually, if they're turned up strong enough, they can actually tear your skin up. Okay, and you see the dog rip the pants right off that boy. This one here is bleeding. Disperse or you'll be jailed, the police shouted the first day. Disperse or you'll get wet, the police shouted the second day. Disperse or we'll release the dogs, the police shouted the third day. We did not disperse. We kept on marching. We wouldn't stop until things started to change. Notice they're peacefully marching. Hundreds of us went to jail on the first day. And even more on the second. My turn wasn't until the third day. Can you imagine how upset the parents were? Their kids getting arrested and going to jail. After I was sprayed by water stronger than anything I've ever felt, rough hands pushed me forward and I fell to my knees in the police wagon. I was going to jail. Dr. King reassured our parents. Don't worry about your children, he said. They're going to be all right. Don't hold them back if they want to go to jail, for they are doing a job for not only themselves, but for all of America and for all mankind. That night, crowded into a cell too small for even half of us kids, we sang, "We shall overcome. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, and freedom is coming." Our parents couldn't be there with us, but still we sang, wrapped in the proud and loving arms of our ancestors.
Is he tweaking her?
With his hand, yes. I know you're trying to be funny, but I'm really tired of it disrupting my class because people's thought process gets off, Logan. Enough with it, okay? I was still in jail, but we heard that the next day and the next, more kids marched. The water hoses they used to sting us could not stop our fierce tide. See all the protesters? The path may be long and troubled, but I'm going to walk on. Turn the other cheek, we had been taught.
Show love where there is hate. The world watched as hate bruised us. But for 7 days, we walked only in love. The jails swelled to bursting, and even President Kennedy took notice. Daddy said the president received letters and calls about us from all over the world. Our march would become a memory, a small part of a larger story. But we had been heard, and the seeds of revolution were sown. Sweet picture, right? 2 days and nights I stayed in jail. Some stayed even longer. When I left, I was tired and sore, and my best dress was ripped. But my smile was as wide as the Mississippi River. I had made a difference. I'm so proud of you, baby girl, Mama said. Your march was what made them see. With nothing more than our feet, voices, and courage, we had done what others could not. Change was right around the corner. We felt it like a cool breeze in an Alabama August. On May 10th, the great news rang out. Dr. King had reached an agreement with the white leaders of the city. Desegregation would begin. 1 month later, I was playing on a playground I'd never been allowed to play on before. 2 months later, my family ate at a diner we'd never been allowed to eat in before. Our march made the difference. We children led the way. Singing the songs of freedom, 1,000 strong, we came. All right. The number for this one's on the board. What is it? Oh. And you can't open up AR while Canvas is on? Oh, okay. All right, so we'll do it when you come back from RTI. I mean, from enrichment during RTI. All right? Where y'all going? We got 5 minutes. Just sit and chill. Sit, Michaela. Sit. Quiet, please. I can't hear you because there's so much noise in here right now. You did one through 5? Okay. And you did all those activities, the 10 through 13, you did that. Just FYI, guys, this book is very wordy. It's at the grade level 7.7, but it is about someone that you've probably not heard existed before. Her name is Maricha Raymond Leon, a child of New York City's striving class of Blacks in the mid-1800s. Not enslaved, not poor, very well-to-do African Americans in the mid-1800s. Really interesting book.
I think all of us are kind of like, 'cause I like to watch a lot of extreme trends, so I really like these books because I watch a lot of side stories about kids that happens on extreme trends, and these are like one of those.
What? Her?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Here's a dance that her family threw. She was very well to
Is
do.
that her looking?
It doesn't say that's her. That's just a painting of one that would be similar high society.
Oh, I put it in like that.
I've got several of you that need to finish up assignments. You could be doing that in Canvas. Here's your mom and dad. Also very well off. I don't know if you guys watched Bridgerton. You gonna use your pass now and not be to go any more this week? Hand me your pass. I don't need the thing that goes in your binder. I just need the pass. Why are you still trying to hand me the thing that goes in your binder? I need this. This reminds me of the story. I've not seen Bridgerton, but the commercials about Bridgerton. This reminds me of that.
They have a movie about both of the books.
What is it?
They have a movie about both of the books.
What?
A movie.
A movie about both of those? Ruby Bridges had quite a few movies made about her.
They write the movie on it.
Yeah, you gotta find it on Netflix. Yes, Miss Snipe. Come look for it. Maya, gonna need you to push away from the desk real quick, please. This is definitely not something you would see in the South. A classroom full of boys and girls who were African American in the mid 1800s. Girls getting educated. You definitely didn't see that in the South.
Wow.
Girls of any race did not get educated in the South. Girls did not need to read. They only needed to be a cross stitch and take care of kids and cook. I would be a complete failure.
I cooked one of my mom.
I will literally go days without eating with someone else.
I only know how to make popcorn.
When I cook, I go all out and make really big meals, but it is not very common. Craig does most of the cooking. He's like, you won't cook, will you? All right, my friends, let's line up. All right, stop either talking.
Just catching our feet, our shoes.
Quiet, quiet, friends. Guys, hush. Students, quiet. They're still talking. Knock it off. Let's go. Miss Mary. Can come off of Canvas. There's the number for Let the Children March. And by the way, we did crash the system. Yeah, we were in, yes, ma'am. We were in Miss Sparks' office and she tried to get on the internet and could not because we all had our computers, our iPads, our Chromebooks on, and it did take our system, so we got our answer. Correct, they didn't find us bandwidth, you already knew that. Hold on, I can't hear her, she raised her hand. You go to what? You gotta speak up. To go to yes. So after you finish up to do that. All right. So everybody can log off of Canvas, go to Renaissance so you can AR test. No talking. Haley, why are you standing?